we're going to talk about China and Finland and the ecosystem realities. Why do we have to have a synchronization challenge? How do we capture opportunities? These are the questions that needs to be answered. John Hoffmann from XRG, Exceptional Resource Group, and Mr. Jari Hietala from Asia Sales Channel Limited are here to talk with you now. And for this, we're hoping to get some time to talk with you guys. So if you have any questions or comments, please. I think we have some time for those as well. But first up, ladies and gentlemen, actually we do have a song for you too, with John Hoffmann with this song.
Good afternoon. My name's John Hoffmann. I work for a company that I co-founded in 1990. I want to welcome you all after lunch and hope that it's going to keep your interest. I'm the third generation of my family to live and work in Asia and China. My grandfather set up his businesses in Shanghai before World War II. That's where my father was born. The Japanese came south into China, and my family moved to the Philippines, where they spent the war in prisoner of war camp. And I was born in Manila, but as you can see, I'm very American. My firm does nothing but China work, and I've been doing China since I took a Chinese philosophy course at college. The wonderful thing about China is it keeps you humble. Anybody who tells you they're a China expert, be very careful, whether they're white or yellow. My definition of an expert, an X is a has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. Those of us that do China deals, we like to think of ourselves as practitioners, apprentices, particularly foreigners in China. But I would like to thank Business Olu for taking the chance on myself and my associate, who you'll be hearing from later, Jari Hietala. And we have worked together on various things where I do China and he does Asia. So when you do a China strategy, it involves a lot more than most people assume, because the China ecosystem is different, complicated. China is a scale in the billions, which if you come from a country like Finland, you know, millions. You come from Europe, 100 million. China is hundreds of millions. There's over 500 million internet active users there already, and the penetration is still increasing. So it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. A lot of people attribute that quote to Darwin. It's not his. It predates him. The source is unknown. But if you look at that split image woman, that is the person who's trying to do China in a linear Western way. We've begun to talk about Western companies like horses, because horses race each other on level playing fields. Race tracks, race meetings, these are organized events. There are judges, there are rules. And at the end of every year, the horse that wins the most, first place, second place, third place, you tot up the earnings, and we call it an annual account. It's really audited, the numbers are real. And that's how investors keep track of Western multinational, Western company activity. Horses on level playing field racetracks, transparent, open, rules. There's never been a level playing field in China, never. China's been around as a civilization for over 20 centuries. It's always had a system of scarcity where people doing business, people trying to live a life, they knew they had no control. So China's much more like an ocean. And it's not a small ocean, it's a big ocean. And the weather changes, and there are lots of things living in the ocean. So we've come to talk about Chinese companies as dolphins. Both the horse and the dolphin are mammals, right? They both breathe air. They have a common species, but they're fundamentally different. The horse uses 5% or more, a little bit more of its brain, because all the horse has to do is run fast in a straight line or jump fences, depending on what the race is. A dolphin uses 10 to 20% of its brain because it has had to evolve a sonar device that allows it to see things 360 degrees around it. Dolphins don't race. They don't move in straight lines. So if you think of Western companies trying to do business in China with Western managers, they've got 1 foot on a horse and 1 foot on a dolphin. It's no wonder the challenge is so great. We try and help people deal with this problem. And the point is, you have lots of options. You don't have to be that split image woman. And when the horse goes one way and the dolphin goes the other, because there are different dynamics and you fall off both, that's what every company wants to avoid, the wasted time, the wasted effort. We try and help people with that challenge. So, given that I only have a limited amount of time, I apologize. I'm going to be generalizing. I would say the fundamental success factor for any China business is alignment, aligning interests. And there is a sequence based on our practical experience of how interest needs to be aligned for you as a company or you as a government. And we work for countries as well as for governments to take advantage of the opportunities in the China market. And for those of you who were here this morning, a professor got up and showed us a graphic of commodity prices that went kind of like this, and then all of a sudden, from 2000, it went through the roof. And it's come down a bit, but he says it's going to go back through the roof. And he asked the audience, what caused that? And somebody guessed 9/11. He said, no. He was from Turku University, futurist. And he said, that's caused by China. The demand of China's economy taking off. It's now the second largest economy in the world after the United States. The China demand is so big that it moves the entire world. And that's why you're here listening to me, because you want to know more about that. So what's happened over the last 5 years is that the top leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, which is the only party that matters in China, has not been aligned. The top people in the Chinese Communist Party and the people that were appointed under them in the government, the military, the provinces, and the state-owned enterprises 5 years ago were not chosen by the current #1 party member Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, President of China, and head of the military. They were chosen by his predecessors. So he has not had an aligned team. He's been working the best he can with people that he doesn't trust and he hasn't put in place. On October 18th in Beijing, we will have the 19th Party Congress, which happens every 5 years. And from all of the indications, Xi Jinping will put into place a much more aligned top party China leadership team. That top party team, which is currently 25 members of the political bureau of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, 7 of whom have national portfolios, and the rest of the 25 have functional or regional portfolios. Those people will drive decision-making, including every business you do as foreigners, every business anybody does in China, including the Chinese. And we will have a new state council where some of those Politburo members will be in the government. The party is kept separate from the government. And once that alignment is done, we will see an opportunity for a 5-10-year harvest of what those individuals want to do and are willing to do, both with Chinese dolphins and with Western horses like you. That's why the timing of this summit is very good. We're about to have a realignment in China, and as you know, when you get the new guy or the new girl in the job, they don't want to do what the predecessor did. They want to do it their way. So we have the opportunity to readjust. And if you think your business for the last 10 years has been great, and it's going to continue to be great, you might want to go and talk to the new guys, because there's no guarantee. Once you have alignment in China, you need to realign in your company, because again, there's just as much opinion how to do China in a company as there is in China how to do China. And you also need to align with your government, particularly if you're going to go into a business that is in a sector in China where the Chinese Communist Party or the state has control. And as you probably all know, because I know Finland's been doing business with China for quite a while, the places the Chinese Communist Party and the state controls are the places where there are profits. So a lot of the businesses you want to do, directly or indirectly, go into those party, state, monopoly-controlled environments. If you don't have internal company alignment, and if you're going into a highly regulated sector, you don't have government, home country domicile, Finland government support, you're not ready to go. So take care of those things first, and then go and deal with the need and the business opportunity in China. I want to talk also about the dynamic of the China market. Up until 2000, the China market was inward-looking. The Chinese were focused on putting their own alignment, their own house in order. But from 2000, they started a program supported by the party and the central government called Go Global, which meant go out and do deals. Both private and state enterprises were not encouraged. In fact, they were prohibited in some cases from going outside China before 2000. In 2013, Xi Jinping started talking about the One Belt, One Road, OBOR. One Belt, One Road. The belt is on land, the road is on water. Don't ask me why. The Chinese do things in different ways, and the jargon and the way they talk is slightly different. But I've been talking about the belt, the road, and the circle for over a year. Who can tell me what the circle is? Anybody? Arctic Circle. And in June of this year, the key central government organization responsible for housing the State Council leading group for One Belt, One Road published the second major strategy paper for OBOR, and they talked about 3 maritime routes for the first time. The first route is the one you see in the left-hand corner, which goes from China through the Straits of Malacca, up the Red Sea, through the Suez to the port of Piraeus, which the Chinese now control. That's the maritime Silk Road everybody sees, talks about. There's a second maritime route, and they don't call them the road. They call them blue economic passages. Don't ask me why. That's what they call them, BEPs. The second blue economic passage goes from China over Taiwan into the South Pacific Oceania. Don't ask me what it's supposed to do. I don't have a clue. I think eventually it'll end up connecting Latin America, but that hasn't happened yet. For you, the third blue economic passage is the most important, and it's not on that map. I haven't seen one map of OBOR that's correct. That's okay, because again, Chinese are comfortable with ambiguity, and so am I. The third blue economic passage goes from China through the Bering Sea and the Arctic Ocean and ends up in Scandinavia and Northern Europe, and you should pay attention to that. Oulu has an opportunity to be part of the third blue economic passage from China through the Arctic to Scandinavia and Northern Europe. That is an opportunity that I see the summit is embracing. I see the word Arctic in many of the topics being discussed today, and I encourage you to think about your unique competitive advantage with all things Arctic, Northern, Scandinavian, because the Arctic will be the place where the Chinese try and get their share of the oil, gas, energy, and everything else that the Americans, the Canadians, the Russians, and you, the Arctic Council, want. So that is a unique opportunity where your competitive advantage could lead you to some very interesting businesses. This slide is up there not because of what the Chinese think about OBOR. This is up there to let you know that the Chinese are not the only people interested. The next slide over is the Russians. They are moving on OBOR. The slide right below that is the Indians. They're competing with China. They're moving in the same geography and doing things. And the final slide in the lower left, Japan's vision. They've just announced they're going to put $200 billion into infrastructure, particularly in Southeast Asia, South Asia, in the same geography. So what China has done by pushing an OBOR Go Global agenda is they've put the entire developing world between Beijing and Brussels in play. You can work that from a China dimension with Chinese partners and dolphins, but you can do that on your own. You can do that with Russian, Indian, and Japanese partners, Korean partners. I would have put them here, but Brussels and Washington wouldn't fit on the map. So I would like to say this slide is one of my favorite images. The Chinese, since the first Opium War, have been trying to develop the capability to do everything they need to do without foreigners. For those of you who haven't studied Chinese-British history, the British showed up in Beijing and said, "We want to trade with you, the empire," Chinese imperial court. And the Chinese said, "Go away. We don't want anything you have to offer." And the British blew the shit out of them. They used modern military technology, mass manufacturing, and brought the Qing Empire to its knees, forced them to buy opium, and occupied coastal cities. That was a catalytic episode in Chinese people's minds. The fact that another country could humble them so quickly. And they've been working ever since to have the capability to do everything they need without us. So a lot of the opportunities are like that jellyfish. Their game is a game of centuries. They are the only civilization state that's coming back to the top of the economic table for a second time. When you do deals with China, you should be cautious because they're not going to stop you from swimming into the jellyfish in that ocean. You have to do your own due diligence. You have to do your own homework. But I can tell you that poor fish who's going to be digested and everything valuable that that fish has taken away from it doesn't have to be you. So I'd like to now hand over to my associate Jari, who will talk to you about how you actually avoid being the fish in the jellyfish.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, John, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm actually originally from this city. I spent my lively youth years in here, actually left Oulu back in 1979 when I went to do my military service and never came back, but my roots are here. And I love to come back here. And for me, there is only one number one ice hockey team in the world that I do follow on a daily basis, and that is Oulun Kärpät. So I guess I'm really Oulu. I met the Business Oulu people, whom I would like to thank for this opportunity to be here with John today, sometime in the spring. And they asked me that would I know a good speaker who could speak about Asia. And I was instantly thinking about my friend John, whom I've known for quite a while. We actually did, how we learned to know each other was through strategy work for Team Finland clean tech strategy in China. And we became good friends. But anyway, to go back to the Business Oulu discussion, I said that I know one guy, but I'm not sure if he's willing to come all this way. But I said that maybe one trick to get him here is that I call him and I tell him that this is my home city. If you don't come, we are no longer friends. So he decided to accept the invitation. I have a difficult challenge to, in a way, try to interpret what John was talking about. I've been personally living and working in Asia for nearly 20 years, both in Southeast Asia and China. I lived in Hong Kong for more than 6 years. And during all these years, I have been supporting and helping probably close to 1,000 Finnish companies to either enter Asia, China included, or somehow improve their situation in these markets. So if you like, there is some backlog of experience that I have learned or gained thanks to working with so many Finnish companies in the region. So I'll try to do my best, but I hope that you can make some sense of what I try to say. First few words about Finnish business in China. I've always used to say that if we look at Finland as an economy, if we compare ourselves to Sweden or Denmark, other European countries, Finland is very well present in China. We used to be, we might still are, the largest Nordic country in China if we measure it in terms of accumulated investments or accumulated amount of workforce that are employed by companies in China. Unfortunately, the other side of the coin is that Finland is underrepresented in the rest of Asia in a big way. China has been, I've called it a kind of fashionable market for years. People go to China because you are supposed to go to China. Our competitors are in China, our neighbors are in China. It's been a fashionable market, kind of a no-brainer type of a market, that if you are a serious company, you are supposed to be in China, which we can be proud of. This slide is a few years old. I think there are some 300 to 400 Finnish companies nowadays, all together in China. Majority of them being located, let's say, in the Shanghai region. That is the biggest concentration of Finnish industry, probably anywhere around the world outside Finland, if we speak about industrial operations. Then the other hub is the Beijing, Greater Beijing region, including Tianjin. And the third one is the Pearl River Delta area, Guangdong, Canton province, including Hong Kong. The highest growth opportunities in China exist outside the eastern coastline. The cost base in places like Shanghai has been risen drastically over the years. And if you like, the competitiveness in terms of the cost comparison compared to other countries in Asia and Western China, for instance, have been diminished. So many companies have been looking at Western China, Chengdu, Chongqing, Xi'an, and so forth. So quite many companies, and interestingly in China, many of the companies are there through industrial investments. So they manufacture products for the Chinese market. Some companies also for exports. But originally, most of the companies that invested in production in China did it for the Chinese market. Then the next question is that have we been really successful when looking at what have the Finnish companies achieved? This pie chart is a couple of years old, but I don't think much has changed since 2014. This was part of the Team Finland strategy work. 138 companies responded to the survey. And according to this survey, more than half of the companies, their turnover in China is less than 5 million. Well, you can draw your own conclusion whether that is a good achievement or not so good achievement when thinking about that China is it's a country of continental opportunities. The Finnish Business Council in Shanghai, they conduct annually kind of a parameter or survey among the Finnish companies. And in September this year, there was a question in the survey asking that how important China is in their company's global business. And about 1/3 of the respondents said that China is for them of vital importance. So we are somewhere there. I think there is still a lot of room for doing better, even for smaller companies. Of course, we have true success stories to tell about China or from China. KONE may be the most notable example. KONE has become the market leader in the elevator business, which is not far from being a remarkable achievement. And there are many others. Valmet went to China as the first Finnish company to have a joint venture already in the early 80s. So we have excellent references and success cases. But overall, the picture is not uniform. And then when we go into these questions that why some companies have succeeded better than some others, what I'm saying here are very subjective opinions. It's just what I think, based on my experience of working in China and in Asia with so many companies. I think if we're looking at the reasons behind the success of Finnish companies, people like KONE, they have done what John was talking about, the alignment. Right? And not only aligned their own thinking and own resources, but they have also been able to align with the Chinese business ecosystem and with the Finnish government. Something that companies do not have to really do in any other country is the political alignment. Whether or not you're a big or small company, there is still always an element of either local or nationwide networking or connections to the political elite, to the Communist Party, that is required. So when you make your value propositions, you also have to take into account the socio-political value proposition. Because Chinese are dolphins, as John was talking about. the arguments or the rationale, the logic that we are used to use when talking to potential clients or authorities in the Western world is maybe not sufficient, or it's not successful method. You have to understand the broader picture and get aligned. So you can maybe appreciate the challenge of doing the alignment in such a complex environment. How do you make your own resources, your own CEOs, your technology people, to understand that what kind of alignment we really need to have in China if we want to be successful there. Second thing, good value proposition for China. I think at the end of the day, when you get down to the business, when Finnish company talks to a Chinese company, at the end of the day, still the business fundamentals are important. The Chinese will buy from you if you can prove him or them that with you they can make more money, or that they can save costs, or they can reduce risks involved in their business and so forth. So the basic fundamental economic reasons are equally valid. But as I said, not necessarily enough. You have to have also the socio-political perspective included. Third point is the tolerance to risk. If one goes to China, the traditional or common way of Finnish humbleness is not something that works in China. China thinks big. Even if you are a small company, you have to act, or you can act bigger than you are in reality. The size doesn't really matter. But at the same spoken, the capability to take necessary risks in China are probably more important things than in any other market. So don't be afraid. Don't be too risk aware. Next point is believable offering and presence. If you want to be in China, you have to be there yourself at the end of the day. Otherwise, if you only deal through third-party channels, which happens to be my main business, I help companies across Asia, particularly to develop their channels to reach their customers in various markets. But if you want to be a believable, credible player in the Chinese market, you must be there yourself. It doesn't mean that there have to be a lot of expats, but you as a company have to have your own resources in the marketplace and have a believable offering. Offering that, in the best case, is adapted to the Chinese market conditions. John has used the word that clean tech Finland doesn't necessarily sell too well in China. The Chinese don't understand that what sells in China is clean enough tech. Maybe something that was common practice in Finland 20 years ago might be exactly what the Chinese need. Then finally, good partnerships with people who really are connected with the relevant stakeholders in the Chinese society. Often when companies have been searching for business partners in China, you come across more often than not with candidate partners who claim that they know absolutely everybody. And usually the ones who really have the connections do not say so. They don't need to. It's a little bit difficult to verify how well your potential partners really are, how well they are connected, whether or not they are inside the right circles. People talk about guanxi. But it's doable, it can be done. And I really recommend that you verify your partners or potential partners true Guangxi. And the reasons for failure are probably the counter, the other side of the coin, more or less the same things as which are the reasons for the success, so I'm not going to go too much to that. Then about the question of how do we capture our share. The first point is to understand and align with the Chinese realities. So do your homework. Understand the market, understand the ecosystem. Identify the relevant parties, relevant actors that are relevant in your particular business. Get aligned. Use the competence and knowledge that exists in the market. Talk to our embassy in Beijing or the consulate general in Shanghai and so forth. Connect yourselves with the people who are there to help you. Because they really can help you and they want to help you. The second one, the adaptation of the offering, I already mentioned. We will never be Chinese. And when looking at the Chinese business overall, it's not one chunk ever. There are different segments. And usually Western companies, Finnish companies including, we usually target the tip of the pyramid, the top-end segment, which usually is dominated by foreign companies. Then China is a country of continental opportunities. It's not a country, it's actually a continent. So don't try to eat the big elephant in one go, because it consists of many markets. Choose, based on understanding the market, the best areas where you can operate, where you differ from your competition, where you have the best chances for success. And invest in high-value partnerships. Build your own Guangxi. It's absolutely crucially important. Then communicate your value proposition for the China upfront. And as I said, don't be too humble. Be big in China, but do it one bite at a time. So that was all what I had to say. I hope that I was able to give you some ideas how to capture your share in the Chinese market. So thank you very much.